Hi, everyone. I am Amy Vetter, and welcome to the Breaking Beliefs podcast, where anything can be possible, because when you believe you can, you will. This series is all about getting honest with ourselves and noticing the things that we carry with us. We each have our own life experiences to go from, and sometimes it's hard to truly understand what it's like to be someone else. What we can do to create change is to start with us. If each of us took one action each day in our own lives, we could collectively change the world around us. But what does it take? It takes work, it takes practice, and we have to be honest with ourselves as we get there. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs, where I interview Jeremy Parsons, who has spent 11 years as a high school teacher and coach before achieving his childhood dream of becoming a fair manager. He has served as the CEO manager of the Clay County Fair in Spencer, Iowa since 2011. He is a passionate advocate for the fair industry and is currently the board chairman for the International Associations of Fair and Expositions. He has 4 priorities in life which he attempts to keep in order, which is faith, family, the Chicago Cubs, and fairs. During this interview, we discuss his background of volunteerism with his family and what he was taught by his parents of getting involved in the community that has now led him to his love of the fair and creating a career that fulfills him. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs, where I will be having Jeremy Parsons today. And Jeremy, would you like to just start off giving a little introduction on yourself?
Sure. So I have the honor to serve as CEO of the world's greatest county fair, a large county fair in Spencer, Iowa. So I'm one of those people that people say, well, what do you really do for a living? You don't do that year round, do you? And so, yes, event planning is year round. So lead a team of 12 that puts on the event here, as well as 300 other events throughout the year. Besides that, more importantly, I'm a dad, 3 sons, and my wife and I, we have been married almost 15 years and actively involved in the community as well. I guess I enjoy people. I guess I enjoy being in the public eye so much. I'm also on our community school board. So I'm a public school board member and also have spent time serving on both the Chamber of Commerce and the CVB here in Clay County.
Yeah, and you're also the chair for the IAFE, correct?
That's correct. So yeah, the International Association of Fairs and Expositions, serving a 1-year term as chairman of the board and really kind of representing kind of the entire industry, I guess, throughout the next year.
Great. Yeah. So I met IAFE speaking there about a month or so ago already. And so happy to have you on because it's an interesting field. I learned a lot while I was there and excited to hear your story. I like to start, though, in the very beginning. So where did you grow up? What did your parents do? That sort of thing.
So I'm a native of Southern Iowa, grew up in a small town of about 2,000 people, mom and dad and 1 sister. And so just kind of a normal rural Midwest upbringing. Didn't live on the farm, but very close to the farm and agriculture. Grew up with my grandparents in the same community, just kind of the typical, I guess, stereotypical, maybe rural, small town, 1 stoplight, all that type of thing. Got to be involved in a lot of activities through high school. Sports and FFA and various things like that. And then went off to college and got a degree in English. And, what do you do with a degree in English? Well, you run a fair. So, life takes a lot of interesting twists and turns, that's for sure. So,
yeah. So what was your father's occupation? What did he do?
Yeah, he actually worked for the USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture, in their natural resource conservation field. So he was involved with a lot of soil conservation work, natural resource work. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, but also operated an in-home childcare business, and then later went to work for the state of Iowa, doing some work in the childcare field, like the registering and like the certifying of in-home daycares.
Okay. Yeah. So were you involved at all with either of your parents' occupations? Like, did they take you with them or you learn about it?
I was involved with my dad's volunteer occupation, which was serving as president of our county fair board. And that's
Oh,
really kind of
okay.
where the love for fair came from. So not to their job, but we did a lot of what my parents called forced family fun. And so that meant volunteer work, like, painting and cleaning at the fairgrounds and those types of things. So that's really kind of the that really got me started in this business. But really, when I just even look back at public service, my dad was a school board member, city council member. Both of them were heavily involved in our community and volunteer type activities. And so, and through our church as well. So a lot of my memories growing up aren't really so much about my parents' jobs, but it was more about their volunteer jobs that became like the family's job, basically. So,
yeah. So how did your dad get involved with fairs in the first place? Why was this a volunteer area for him?
Just again, my parents were both actively involved in the community, and he was involved in several activities in Leon, Iowa, which is where I grew up. And that just led to being involved, at the fair. And so, he spent time on the fair board there. And obviously that was kind of my introduction to the business as well. So.
And what did you like about it as a kid? What was it about the fair that you enjoyed?
Yeah, as a kid, I think the fair was, it was a lot of work. Obviously, from my perspective, growing up in what happened to get ready for the fair. So it was a lot of work. And of course, I did not show livestock at the fair, but exhibited in other areas. And so, the fair for me was really about family. When I really think back about it, not only seeing other families come out and enjoy the fair, but for me, that's where I spent a lot of time with my family, and as I look back at that. So really a lot about family for me.
Mm-hmm. What were you exhibiting?
All sorts of things, in different like creative arts activities, whether it was arts or then also stuff out of the garden, fruits and vegetables and those types of things.
So did your parents ever talk about why they loved it? Like what it was to them?
I think, and they're still both involved at the fair. Actually, my mom is, my dad is no longer, but I think the same thing, family, and just really this sense of, for them, it was a way to give back to the community. I guess, as you get older, you look back at things your parents did and you're like, why did they do that? Yeah. I mean, what, and now as you get older, you see, I see now the importance that they obviously placed in the community and giving back. At the time when you're a kid, you don't realize that's what they're doing. And I don't even know when we do those activities, if we realize that's why we're doing it. But when you look back on it, you see, obviously there's this sense of pride in the community and wanting to help out. And, now that's pretty cool when you realize it. At the time, you thought it was annoying.
Right.
Let's go back there and paint again. Why can't we stay home? Type of a thing. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So you said your mom was a stay-at-home mom with childcare.
Yep.
So was that what got you interested in kids? Because I see that you were a high school teacher eventually.
Yeah. So right out of college, I spent some time as a high school teacher and coach, and grew up just with one sister. But, our family was unique. My sister is adopted. She's from South Korea. And that was it. I remember not every 8-year-old, goes to the airport to get their new sibling,
Yeah.
That's what happened in our situation. Kids were also important. I think that ties back to the fair as well. Fairs are all about youth development, and again, as I just sitting here right now and look back, it is a lot about kids and youth and being involved. And then I was able to, do that for a while teaching right out of college.
Yeah. So so just going to your sister a little bit.
Yeah.
So what caused your parents to adopt from South Korea, or what precipitated that?
Yeah. So, and that's interesting too, because when you're 8, you don't really know all the backstory of those types of things. So my parents really just felt like there were other kids that needed opportunities. And so they decided to adopt and worked with, it was a Christian adoption agency out of South Korea, and just really felt that was a way that they could, again, help and provide a new life for someone, basically. And so my sister, we know very little about her background. She was one of those true left at the doorsteps of an orphanage type deal, So it's been interesting as she's gotten older, as with all of us, there are some, hereditary like medical and dental type things. Well, when you don't know, it's brand new, it's not hereditary type things. So, but she's a physical therapist, a doctorate in physical therapy, and runs a PT department at a hospital, actually in my hometown where we grew up.
Okay. So how did that feel when you met her at the airport? Do you remember that moment?
Oh, I remember that moment vividly. It was kind of cool. So at that time, and I may have the details a little wrong on this, but at that time, they would still bring the babies over. So my parents didn't have to go to Korea. They actually brought her over. And I still remember we were at the Des Moines, Iowa airport, and this lady walked off the plane, and she had this 18-month-old baby in her arms. I guess toddler, 18 months old, but had this baby with her and a backpack, and basically handed the backpack and the baby to my mom and dad. And
wow.
Yeah, there you go. There's, so, and of course, that was before technology, there were no such thing as Zoom, barely internet, even at that time. That would have been like, in the early 1980s type of a thing, so just, a whole different world. And I really don't know the process behind, how they picked my sister, how all that worked necessarily. But I do remember that vividly. It's like, well, here's your sister. The only other thing I remember is obviously culturally in Korea, and especially in the orphanage where my sister was from, sleeping arrangements are more like mats on the floor, not really in beds. And so that was one of the adjustments we had to do for the first month or so when she was with us. I remember you slept on the floor with her because that was, just to begin the acclimation process. So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So what did it feel like to go home and just kind of calibrate that it was your sister?
Yeah. A change, obviously, I don't remember as much when I was 8. That's been a few years ago, but no, but I just remember that change. And again, just back to, she was 18 months old as well, so you didn't have that process of adjusting to a newborn, it's
right.
Had a little sister right away, that could do things type of a thing. So, yeah.
Yeah. And so what has it been like, being multicultural in the town that you're in a small town. So did that change anything growing up, or your kind of awareness or experience because of that?
I would say it really did probably help my awareness more than what I realized, really thinking about it growing up, I guess I never really thought about growing up in a multicultural home, but that's exactly, what we were, and still are, obviously. But, it was, there were some things, my sister, I wouldn't say faced, any type of prejudice or anything like that, but, it was different. I mean, she, I think back to, going to a small rural Iowa school, 50 kids in a grade, she was like the minority in her grade, so it is different that way. And I think probably for me, growing up in a home, in a multicultural type home, and even a home where early on with some different traditions, again, 18 months old, she knew some Korean and so learning English and all that was pretty minor at 18 months, but still there was that transition of, even the sleeping on the floor thing, I would have never even known that was a thing, really.
Right.
In my limited, worldview that I had, without that experience.
Yeah. So, how was her experience growing up? Like, did she face any adversity because of it?
I really don't think so. We were fortunate to be in a pretty accepting community. And I think the situation would have been different for her, obviously, had she been 16 rather than 18 months, type of a thing. She obviously was fully assimilated, I guess you could say, into the culture through her time. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely different perspective, and so, but I really can't say that she faced a lot of issues. I remember one time, my cousin, and I do remember this because we thought this may have been a time, and Sarah, my sister, probably wasn't very old, but she came in one day, I remember, to my mom and was really crying because people were making fun of her because she was different. And so I remember my mom was ready to have this big conversation. And it was actually, she was being made fun of because she had long black hair, like dark hair, had nothing to do with, no one realized any of the other features, So, but I do remember that, my mom was ready, I know, for this big conversation about, you are different and it's okay. But no, it was more just about the hair.
Yeah. That's where it comes down to with girls a lot of times.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think it also shows, you look at kids, for the most part, are really so accepting of whoever, whenever, whatever. They're really, in some ways, they should be models for the rest of us, for sure.
Yeah. So, it sounds like in your house, not only did you have, a sister that, had a different background, but with your mom doing daycare in your house, you had a lot of different kids in your house. So seems like that would be formative just because you don't really have your mom to yourself all the time. Like she's the caregiver to everybody, in the door. And then what do you think you learned from watching your mom do all this?
There were a lot of, you're right. I mean, a lot of kids in and out of our house, and so you think just about how kids are raised differently, and then they go to a daycare provider, and different rules there and different things. My mom is still a very caring person. And as I look back, one of the ways she was caring was through that process of providing childcare. A lot of kids in the community, she kind of was the pseudo mom, obviously during the day. But, it back to, I think, just opened my horizons. You had kids in your house that sometimes acted and maybe said things that we weren't allowed to say in our house.
Right.
So it was always interesting. And I think that really did, and as I've thought about that, back to that, probably, again, broadened my perspective a lot more, that with other kids in and out of your house, you just see that there's different ways to do life, basically. So
so it sounds like your background is very much about the community, taking care of others, family, and so you can totally see that you going into the fairs with it being a family thing. So how did you start getting involved in the first place? Like where was the jump between high school teacher and I'm going to do this as a career?
So I got to go back a little further because again, life takes a lot of twists and turns. So when I was in elementary school, we had to do a project, what do you want to be when you grow up? And so I knew I liked fairs. I grew up, my dad was a county fair board president. And of course, we spent a lot of time at the Iowa State Fair, which is a huge event, one of the largest events in the United States, actually. And so, spending some time there, I'm like, well, for this career fair, I'm like, well, somebody has to work there, right? Something has to do something. So this was upper elementary. So that led to, as with all school projects, you have to write a letter to somebody in that career and get information. And so I sent a letter to the manager of the Iowa State Fair at the time. And he responded back. And so that began some conversation for this school project, led into, next time you're at the Iowa State Fair, you should really come see what I'm doing, which, is kind of a unique thing that I think back to youth development and mentorship. And again, community, that this guy is CEO of the Iowa State Fair, and he tells this elementary kid to come find me during the fair and see what I do. And he was true to his word. And I got to spend like an hour with him at the fair, seeing what he did. And so that really just kind of opened a door that then, you fast forward to I'm in high school, I was offered a summer job at the Iowa State Fair, so that was where I started.
Did you stay in touch with him or?
I did. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Off and on. So there was some kind of continued, he became one of those people down the road. If you had a future career project, oh, I know this guy, I can reach out to him. Oh, a leadership project for high school class. Oh, I know this guy, I'll reach out to him. So anyway, and loved working at the Iowa State Fair in the summers. Did that through high school.
What did you do there?
I was actually in the entertainment office. So planning all the different entertainment aspects of the fair. So did that through college.
I've been to the Iowa State Fair and saw the fried butter.
Oh, very good.
I didn't eat it.
Yeah. All that stuff. So, I was in the entertainment office there. And that was a great summer job, of course, high school and through college. And, went to college and I thought, well, this would be a great career, but just didn't know where the path was going to, twist and turn. So, took my English degree and started teaching high school English, which I still had my summers open to work at the fair. And so I continued that, for about 10 years of teaching. And then just decided it was time for a change. I guess I don't know if burnout is the right word, but it was just you just sometimes get a feeling that it's time to do something. I know your life story is pretty unique from the conversation, from CPA and all the different things you've done. And I don't know, I just felt like it was just a sense to do something else. And at that time, a full-time opportunity opened up actually at the Missouri State Fair, which my wife and I were living in northern Missouri and teaching at the time. And so that led to that, which then led to my job here in Spencer. So, just kind of some twists and turns that way for sure.
So where do you think, and now that you are running the fair, from your background and your experience and just what your parents taught you, what have you been able to bring into your leadership there, or your planning, that you can kind of look back at where that came from?
Yeah, I think first of all, first and foremost, if you've coached high school girls basketball, which I did for 6 or 7 years, you become a quick expert on team building, dealing with conflict, and more importantly, dealing with parents, because the parents were always worse than the kids. So yeah, I laugh about that a lot, but it's so true. That in itself, and just teaching in general, when you're teaching, you have to be able to adapt. You have to learn to kind of do things on the fly. You got to be able to figure out what makes each individual person tick, to learn. It's the same thing as an employer. I mean, I think I'm using those skills over and over. To be a good boss, you have to be able to motivate employees. You got to be able to know what exactly makes each of them tick. It might be kind of individualized. And so the coaching and teaching thing really has prepared me a lot, I think, for my leadership, and taught me also, I have really mellowed, I think, over the years from being quite the control freak I was. I think teaching helped me with that a little bit, because you're not going to control those kids every second of every day. And I think that's really helped me now. I think had I gone right into a job like this right out of college, I would not be nearly as good of a boss as I am now, because I think I learned to really let people do their own thing a little bit, and realize, I think especially with teaching, as long as a kid got to the end product and it was quality, how they got there really doesn't matter. Everybody learns different. And so I see that now I think had I not had that educational piece as a teacher, I would probably not be the type of boss I am today, which I hope to be a boss of a collaborative nature, and really not micromanaging, and let people, get to the end on their own. But teaching really helped me get there.
Is there anything that you kind of, believed about what it was going to be like to run a business like this that was wrong, or that you learned like you had to pivot or shift?
Yeah, I think I came into this job with some preconceived notions of probably how things should be, and quickly had to pivot and realize that while that maybe is how they should be, that's not how they are. Mm-hmm. So if I want to get them how I think they should be, then I've got to develop this process, this culture to get us there. And it's not just going to happen because I snap my fingers type of a thing, So I think that probably has been the biggest change, and just also, again, back to my parents, just understanding the importance of being involved in the community. So many work relationships are really based on community volunteer type stuff, and if you stay, kind of cloistered in your office all day, or only so focused on your job that you can't participate in the greater community around you, you miss a lot of work opportunity. It may seem, counterproductive. I'm not going to be at work for an hour sitting here at my desk, because I'm going to go be involved on a Chamber of Commerce board. But yet what I do at that Chamber of Commerce board actually makes my job easier in some ways.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes people get so focused on, I got my job and I got to sit here at my computer and do my job. And then they're really not, they're missing out on a whole lot of things that would actually make their job and relationships easier if they would just take the time to do it.
Yeah. Creating that community that you can call upon.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So it seems like you've also kind of learned that from your parents of getting involved with that and getting involved in the National Fair Association. How do you think that's been important for your local fair to be a part of that?
Well, it's been a great honor for sure. And I think just to be able to represent, the Clay County Fair it's a large fair. It's 300,000 people over 9 days. So it's not maybe what you think about your normal 2 or 3 day kind of small county fair and carnival. So it's a big event, but yet at the same time, it's been pretty exciting here in a smaller town in Northwest Iowa where the fair is located to really be able to represent the fair on that national scale. So again, just an opportunity. You look at even other fairs in the fair community to give back, and to help the organization in that way.
Yeah. I just think I do a lot of volunteer work as well. And in the accounting profession, it's just good to give back to the resources that help you. And yes, it's time you have to put aside and can be a bigger commitment. But, I've always found you benefit from putting in that time with these associations.
Yep.
You want them to survive, right?
Right. Yeah. You want them to survive. And back to what you just said, they have played such a role in your formative development. You need to give back. You should give back. You should want to give back, I guess.
So how do you educate like the younger people that are working there to get involved with associations? Because that's definitely an area that I think is hard for every association, is getting younger professionals involved.
Yeah, it is. I know for us, I think it's been a little bit through modeling and a little bit through, so hopefully, they see what I'm doing and they want to model that. But also, I guess I have been pretty forceful about you will be involved, and because I think for some, they just don't even think about it necessarily,
Right.
So,
or why they would do it.
Yeah. So if you're a younger employee here, using our trade association as an example, there's lots of little monthly webinars that they can participate in. And we make sure they know they need to build time into their schedule to participate into those. And then hopefully over course of time, they're just going to do that on their own, because once you develop those connections, you're going to want to be involved and continue to do that. But I do think, I think in today's world, I don't think every person is as fortunate as I was to grow up in that home where that was modeled. And so, and you just know that's true when you just look in other community organizations. I mean, everybody's looking for volunteers. So obviously there's a disconnect there. So I think you somewhat have to, it's a behavior you have to teach people, I think. I was fortunate to have been taught that by my parents, but others maybe need to be taught that by their employers and, just to help give back that way.
Yeah. Awesome. So I like to end the interview with some rapid fire questions. Okay. So picking a category, either family and friends, money, spiritual, or health.
Let's do family and friends.
Okay. Things or actions I don't have that I want.
I would say the thing would be more time just to spend with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Things or actions I do have that I do want.
I think for me, one of the things I've done, and I want to continue, this is going to be rapid fire, but I'm trying, but
that's fine.
Is I intentionally removed work email off my phone. And that has, I have discovered since I did that, number one, I have not missed any big deal, or the world has not missed. But when I'm at home, even though I always have my phone with me, it is never anything work related. I mean, unless somebody calls or texts, you know what I mean? But I'm not sitting there answering work emails. And so I guess that's something I have done and that I'm definitely going to continue in the future, because again, I can't ever say at, 9:00 at night when I'm sitting on the couch with my kids, that email that somebody maybe sent me, I've always answered the next day and it's been just fine. So
yeah, I love that. That's a great example.
Yeah.
Things or actions that I don't have that I don't want with my family and friends.
Well, at this point, I'm pretty fortunate and pretty blessed to have good kids. And what I mean by good kids is they're 12, 9, and 6. But as they get older, I don't want them to have issues with substance abuse, for example, or I don't want them to have, issues with bullying. And I know that's coming, but I would love to keep them in that bubble as long as I can.
Yeah. Well, and paying attention, like you said, is an important step to that, right?
Yeah. Right.
And last one, things or actions that I do have that I don't want.
Again, I think just even still distractions from work.
Yeah.
Distractions from work for sure.
Still hard, right?
Yeah, it is.
Stay focused. Yeah, absolutely. So you've had such a great story. Is there anything you want to make sure that people walk away from this interview that we didn't talk about that you want them to walk away with?
I think just be flexible. Again, life has a lot of twists and turns, but honestly, as I've sat here just visiting with you the last 45 minutes, I've realized that the grounding that my parents provided in community involvement really has stayed with me the whole way. And I had never really thought it's sometimes you got to talk out loud to think through that stuff. So, I think that's, just the flexibility, but then also just get involved in your communities for sure. Yeah. Don't be afraid to give back.
Yeah, love that. Well, great. Well, thank you so much. And I appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Thank you.
And now for my mindful moments during this interview that I had with Jeremy Parsons that was so embedded in family and community and how that has affected the choices that he made as he became an adult and also made decisions for his career. I think a lot of us, which he even noted during this interview, we don't necessarily step back and realize why something resonates the way that it does with us and why we have certain desires that, will pull on the inside of us that actually create decisions in our lives or pivots in our career that are so important to identify, because it's all about really understanding what drives us, what's our personal purpose, and how are we designing our life to make sure we're aligned with those values, with those inner intuition that we have about ourselves and what makes us happy. And when we push those things down and we ignore it, a lot of times we don't realize when we're feeling off until something happens that allows us to really just open our eyes and pivot. And we talked about Jeremy's background with his parents of volunteerism and their involvement with the community and the state fair, and his mother having a home daycare and helping children from all different backgrounds in their house as well. And sometimes you don't even realize that really was affecting his mindset as he was growing up. He talked about that sometimes it felt like a lot of hard work to volunteer at the fair, but over time, he really had this desire that kept pulling him there. And I loved his story of when he did a project in elementary school about what do you want to be when you grow up. And that's when he wrote a letter to the CEO of the State Fair of Iowa, and he actually invited Jeremy to come and learn about the fair and what he does. And I think a lot of us we get so busy, we forget how important those things are, of just giving people our time, even if it's a few minutes, or in this case, he gave his time to actually show what he did. It actually ended up coloring his whole future and the things that he started placing importance of, and gave him the opportunity to work at the fair throughout his career. And then even as a school teacher, he was still working there during the summers. And so we can't minimize how important it is to be reaching that hand out and allowing people to learn how we got to be where we are in our career. Everybody has a story, and they're all interesting. That's what this podcast is really about. And what can we learn from each person. The other thing he talked about as far as being a leader and things that he learned from being a school teacher was around team building, conflict management, and, he said dealing with parents, but dealing with customers and, outside people that are still your stakeholders that you need to please, and you have to step back and pause and really try to understand what it is that each person needs and nurture that and respond to it and show that you care. And so we talked a lot about those things of how he's really had to, even when you want to push fast and move forward faster, a lot of times we have to slow down in order to speed up, understand what everyone's personal drive is and motivation so that we're able to achieve the overall outcome that we want, but we are actually nurturing the people on the way to get there. And lastly, we talked about the importance of volunteerism and supporting associations. I know, with the AICPA and state societies and associations like we talked about with the fairs and expositions, I'm part of a speakers association. Wherever your career is, it's so important that we give back to our profession that, we have developed careers in. A lot of us think that maybe it's a waste of time or don't have the time, but we always get back from giving. And I think it's really important to really step back and look at the things that you're doing and where are you giving back, and having the right balance and boundaries, because once you do give back, everybody's asking you to do a number of things. So you do need boundaries of what you can handle and what you can't handle so you don't get overworked there too. But really, truly understanding what's been important to you in your life and your career and how you can do the same for others. I hope you enjoyed this interview, and share it, subscribe to the podcast, like it. Your comments and your support means so much to this podcast to keep it going. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Breaking Beliefs podcast. I hope you will take a moment to pause before entering back into your day to reflect on this podcast and note 1 to 2 actions you are inspired to do from today's conversation that you could incorporate into your life. To read the full blog and listen back to this episode or any other, you can find them at www.amyvetter.com/Breaking Beliefs podcast and related videos on my YouTube channel. For daily inspiration, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Amy Vetter CPA. I hope that you will choose to like this and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and more, so that you can join us for more inspiration on our next episode.